I'd like to welcome all parties and introduce the committee. Few housekeeping items. Mobile phones need to be switched off unless you're using it for hearing this discussion. All members are reminded they can't leave the meeting during the presentation or debate. If they leave, they'll be unable to vote on the application. If for any reason you believe you did not hear the entire debate, then please abstain when the time comes to vote on that particular item. Less relevant and remote, but members of the public and local members are here present purely to observe the process, unless they're presenting when I'm invited to present. If I lose connection, then Councillor Price, as the Vice Chairman, will stand in until I can regain connection to the meeting. If another member of the committee loses connection, I may decide to have a short adjournment in order for the member to attempt to rejoin. We have changed the constitution so that speakers now get 5 minutes, whereas some in the past had 3. We will have a notification when your time is up. Can I ask the clerk to indicate that?
Sorry, Chairman, I missed that. Chairman, we've not received them.
Well, you will be notified when your time is up. We seem to have a technical problem in demonstrating it. I'll ask each of the councillors on the committee to switch on the microphone and video and introduce themselves. Councillor Beston.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Councillor Michael Beston, Shanklin Central Ward.
Councillor Cameron.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Councillor Cameron from Freshwater North, present at this meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Churchman.
Sorry, Councillor Vanessa Churchman. My ward is Haven Street, Hayland, Saneshi.
Councillor Fuller.
Councillor Paul Fuller. I'm Cowes councillor representing Cowes West and Gurnard.
Councillor Hastings.
Councillor Steve Hastings, Central White Ward.
Councillor Hollis.
Councillor Richard Hollis, representing Newport West.
Councillor Howe.
Councillor Howe, Tottenham Ward.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, representing Newport Central.
Councillor Price.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Matt Price, representing Newport North, which includes Whippingham South.
And Councillor Tyndall.
Councillor Brian Tyndall, representing Brading St Helens and Bembridge.
And I am Councillor Chris Quirk, representing Shanklin South and chairman of this committee. We now move on to the agenda. Can I ask members to turn off their cameras? Members, can you advise me if there are any issues with the minutes from the last meeting? I therefore propose approval of the minutes and ask for a seconder.
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Declaration of interest. Members were asked to notify the clerk in advance of today's meeting to advise of any declarations of interest. Councillors, if you believe you have an interest that you've not pre-notified the clerk of, please indicate such via the chat function.
Chairman, I should declare an interest in that I am the councillor for Cowes West and Gurnard, which is the first application that is on tonight's agenda.
Thank you.
Sorry, I put it in the chat bar just now that as I'm Cabinet Member for Corporate Resources, property comes under my portfolio, but it won't affect my decision today.
Thank you very much. Clark, can you read any declarations that you received that we haven't heard?
Chairman, I haven't received any, but I'm under the impression that Councillor Jones-Evans has just indicated in the chat bar that she'd like to
Okay.
notify you.
Yeah, Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a non-pecuniary interest in the item on Sandown Town Hall, as I have a regeneration business in Sandown High Street.
Okay, thank you. We move on to public question time. My understanding is that the question that was submitted has been withdrawn because the local member was able to answer it. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
So there are no public questions.
No, we didn't receive anything else.
We move on to agenda item 4, planning applications. So the first one is reference 20/02026/FUL, land adjacent to Greenacres, 211 Bearing Road, Cowes. Can I ask the officer to present, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully committee can all hear me. I will just try and share the presentation. Please bear with me because there may be a slight delay in it appearing. I'm hoping members can all see that as I start the slideshow. Lovely. I've got a red circle around it, so I'm going to presume everyone can see unless anybody puts in the chat bar to say that it's not visible on screen. So hopefully everybody can see what I'm sharing at the moment. As indicated in the report, the application site is on the western side of Bearing Road in Cowes, immediately adjacent to number 211 Bearing Road. 211 Bearing Road is shown by the marker on this Google Earth image on the screen at the moment. Locationally, members should generally be aware of this. You've got Tuttons Hill running to the south of the screen here, with Bearing Road running along here. The site that can be seen in this position at the oh, you can't see my cursor. Let me see if I can sort that out. What appears to be the site above the brown area where there's a construction site, that is the site known as Dotton, or land adjacent Dotton's Farm. Members may recall, those who attended, we visited that site during the site visit for development sites, so members should be able to see that. So hopefully that views. Sorry, I'm being told that it hasn't gone to slideshow function, so my apologies. I am asking it to go to there, so bear with me one moment. So hopefully that, and you can all see that better. So moving through slides, again, that's just showing the application site again, but on a plan version. Again, you'll see the properties to the south of the application site, which are the first few that you get to alongside Bearing Road before you run the other in a northerly direction. Again, the site shown in a bit more detail in terms of a site plan, and then alongside it is the application plan. So hopefully in this plan you can now all see my laser pointer, as it were. The application is shown on this plan, which seeks consent for 6 detached dwellings. They would form two bedroom bungalows, which effectively bookend the development site. You've then got 2 3-bedroom chalet bungalows, and then 2 4-bedroom, what the report terms 2-storey, but you'll see in the presentation as we move on, that accommodation, that's first floor accommodation, is within the roof space of those units in the main. So I will move through that's the site plan in a bit more detail for you members, which shows those plots and with the parking shown to the front of them. As outlined in the report, all the units have individual accesses off Baring Road, much like other properties within Baring Road itself, to provide access to those 6 units. Moving through, I've got a selection of images which I will focus on for a bit longer than normal, just so members who don't know the site as well have the opportunity to see it within its context. As shown on the site plan, the arrow shows where these photographs were taken from. Hopefully everyone can see them. Effectively, it's looking in a southerly direction on Baring Road, and the site is on the side of us. On the other side of the road, it shows the linear pattern of development that currently sits along Baring Road, which is in the form at this point generally of single-storey and chalet dwellings, although there is a huge variety of properties within Baring Road. At this point, members will see that the majority of these are chalet bungalows, and then the site sits opposite, as can be seen from the point of the cursor, and then in this area. Again, moving through some images, this is taken slightly further along. You can see the site in the distance, and just giving some context in terms of that application site. Another image looking from the other direction. Again, you can probably see the properties on the opposite side of Baring Road more closely in this image, and then the existing hedge boundary to the proposed site in this image. Some photographs closer up of the existing adjacent properties, both the bungalow that's immediately adjacent to the site, 211 Baring Road, but also the 2-storey properties alongside that, moving down towards the roundhouse, which give the site a little bit more context. Ultimately, the site is the other side of this fence, in essence. Some images taken, you can see from the plan here with the images with the arrows on it, where each of these photographs are taken from. They relate to the colours of the letters within the other images, and show a general appearance of the remainder of Baring Road outside the site. So members will note that this is the site area. And these show, as you look down, what is called the Jordan Valley, past what is an existing farm complex, and across the farm complex, and then further down Baring Road looking along. The site effectively would take the line of the rear of these properties and work along in this area. We've included these images from Tutton's Hill as we consider them to be really quite important to the context of the Jordan Valley and the views that you get of it as you pass this area. Officers are very conscious that a number of concerns have been raised with regards to the impact of the proposed development on the Jordan Valley. And so we thought it was important to include these photographs, which shows from the arrow on this plan shows where those images are taken from. What members will note when you look at the photographs, these are the existing properties that you see along Baring Road. The application units would therefore sit alongside these. As members will note from the report, officers feel that actually elongating that relationship with Baring Road won't have a fundamental impact on the appearance of the Jordan Valley, and actually what is of more importance to that vista is the image from Tutton's Hill as you look across the gap effectively between the built form and the other properties on this side where the cursor is. In essence, as you'll note from the report, officers considered the site to be a highly sustainable location, and as you continue this line across, there is not a significant impact on the character of this central valley area. And members will note from this image, as I've said previously, that you already perceive the properties on the opposite side of Baring Road from this vista, and so officers consider that actually continuing that built form wouldn't impact on that overall character to an unacceptable degree. These are some more images that show further along Tutton's Hill as you look across at that relationship between the built form and the Jordan Valley. Again, as members will note, you've got the existing properties that front Baring Road, and as stated, it would be this area that would be infilled, and as outlined in the report, officers considered that this wouldn't impact on the overall character of the Jordan Valley, which is seen to be in this area. And some more images that show again the the vista across onto the ridge where you see the existing properties on the opposite side of Baring Road. Some more images showing again the properties opposite and then the northern boundary of the site, which is delineated by those trees. We wanted to include this image as well, which is showing one image from Baring Road looking across. What officers have previously discussed in terms of the relationship between properties on this side of Baring Road and the rest of that street frontage is that there is capacity for some development, but there is also the need for some gaps within that. What members will see in this image is that there is an important vista, or considered to be an important vista, of the church through to Gurnard, and actually that would be retained in line with this development in both when you're going up Tuttons Hill and through from Baring Road as you look across, and having that vista from the kind of outside edge of the site. Moving through some of the details of the actual application itself, so as stated, there are 6 proposed dwellings. Plots 1 and 6 would be the bungalows, which sit at bookends to the site itself, and are providing two bedroom accommodation within those. You've then got plot 2, which again is a chalet bungalow, and then plot 4. With then plots 3 and 5 providing the 4 bedrooms. The previous plots would be 3 bedrooms. These are in the report referred to as 2-storey units, and although they appear more 2-storey from the western elevation, what members will note that from the eastern elevation, which is the Baring Road, much of that accommodation is within the roof space, as it were, so it brings the massing of those units down in accordance with the other properties that sit within Baring Road and that wider context. That's the end of the presentation. And so I will refer back to Chairman. Officers are recommending conditional permission for the application when giving due regard to the harm that we consider is associated with the construction of units on this site and the sustainable nature of the proposed development in relation to the current housing need on the island as a whole, as outlined within the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Can you take down your presentation?
I can try.
Thank you. We now have a objector, Michael Rainey. I understand that there's a written statement. Ari Bolter, do you have that?
Good afternoon, Chairman. I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, I'm going to be reading out the statement from an objector.
That's fine.
The statement reads, I wish to object to this application in principle and on policy grounds. I disagree with a number of statements made in the planning report. I urge the committee to refuse the application or at least ask for a substantial reduction in the number of houses and hence the landscape impact. Gurnard is defined by its 2 high landscape valleys. The Jordan Valley, in which this application sits, also serves as a green gap, providing settlement separation from cows and carries specific protections. Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan states that new development which could have a detrimental impact on the character and landscape value will not be supported. The Jordan Valley in particular, known as LCA7, carries a specific further restriction, and I quote, any built development will be resisted. The valley can only be enjoyed by the community from the surrounding roads. This 4th application still occupies the same frontage to Baring Road. The impact on the enjoyment and protection of the landscape value of the valley remains as compromised as the 2 refused applications and the withdrawn application, despite the improvements that have been made to other aspects. Some 140 new house approvals on non-residential sites have been absorbed by Gurnard in the last 8 years or so. The hatched shaded areas on the drawing show some of the new housing already approved near this site, with the application site ringed in red. It will be seen that along Baring Road, the proposed development will block over 40% of the remaining gap. The enjoyment of the open vistas over the valley to west and south towards the Gurnard Plateau past the line of ancient oak trees will be unacceptably compromised. This is a very serious detrimental impact, and I disagree with the officer's conclusions that it would not degrade the wider landscape setting of the Jordan Valley. It breaches the principle of not building in the Jordan Valley and is contrary to policy E1 of the neighbourhood plan and paragraph 11D of the MPPF. Although the site is only, and I quote, of relative sustainability, the fact that the council has not sufficiently met the government's housing delivery test, produced from a discredited algorithm, appears to override nearly all other policies and changes them to a presumption in favour of development. This is, unless, under paragraph 11D, the policies that protect areas or assets of particular importance provide a clear reason for refusing the development. I believe this is a clear reason for refusal in this case. If this application is approved, then in its present form, then one has to ask if there is any value in neighbourhood plans, yet alone the broader protection policies in the MPPF and the council's island plan. I would say, Chairman, and I'm now stop reading the statement, that a plan drawing was provided with the statement, which unfortunately we cannot share due to incompatibility issues with our technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ollie. We now have Councillor Nikki Wood presenting for the parish.
Hi, good afternoon.
You have 5 minutes, Nikki. I will disappear for a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name's Councillor Nicola Wood and I'm representing Gurnard. Gurnard Parish Council strongly opposes this planning application on the following policy grounds. This planned development would have an adverse impact upon the landscape characteristics of the Jordan Valley. Feedback on the new housing allocations within the island planning strategy has yet to be determined, but it is noted that after the first draft, both the local Isle of Wight councillor and Gurnard Parish Council raised concerns on 3 fields adjacent to Tutton's Hill. This application will further narrow the gap between Cowes and Gurnard, coalescing both communities and creating a cumulative impact upon the Jordan Valley. Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan identifies several sites elsewhere in the parish. If more housing is needed, these sites have a much lesser impact upon the remaining Jordan Valley. The applicant gives no evidence to support that this proposal will meet the local housing needs. Development is outside the settlement boundary and lies on a greenfield site which is currently used as agricultural land. More trees are needed to reduce our carbon footprint and create a greener island. Giving a narrative to the above and your officer's recommendation, Gurnard Parish Council would like to emphasise the importance of Gurnard's plan and the many hours work our community put in to ensure that our village neighbourhood plan was robust and fit for purpose. Most of our community had an active input and was involved in shaping our plan to what it became. This is something that we're very proud of. The golden thread that runs through our plan is the requirement to protect the beautiful Jordan Valley which separates Cowes and the village of Gurnard from further development and settlement coalescence. It is noted that since work commenced on our plan in 2011, more than 230 dwellings have been approved within the valley before the plan was adopted in 2017. What is important for our parish council is the need to protect the landscape characteristics, particularly the high quality landscape characteristics across the Solent to the New Forest from positions in Worsley Road, Tutton's Hill and Baring Road. In light of this, to safeguard the Jordan Valley, which is known as LCA7, and mitigate against further invasive development, our plan identified 4 locations where these landscape characteristics would not be adversely impacted. These locations were agreed by planning officers and through referendum by residents. Mindful that future development will happen, Gurnard Parish Council took a pragmatic approach to the Isle of Wight Council's Island Plan in 2019, identifying the 3 most important fields as green spaces to safeguard our village from development. This development is planned on one of these 3 sites. We therefore ask the Planning Committee to refuse this application as it is contrary to Policy E1, paragraph 2 of Gurnard's Neighbourhood Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you turn your camera off, please? We now go on to Andrew Wood, the agent for the developer. Sorry, Andrew White. Andrew.
Hello, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. Are you okay for me to start?
Yep, far away.
Thank you. The Council does not have a 5-year land supply. Moreover, central government published the housing delivery test measurements in January of this year, confirming that the number of homes required over the relevant period was 1,823, but only 978 were delivered, resulting in a measurement of 54%, being one of the lowest across the entire country. With these factors in mind, Policy SP1, which dictates the location for new housing, is out of date. As such, the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies, meaning that permission should be granted unless significant and demonstrable harm would outweigh the benefits. Notwithstanding the fact that SP1 is out of date, it is worthy of note that the site does lie immediately adjacent to the defined settlement boundary for cows. The potential offered by this site has been discussed at length with the council. Firstly, it was taken through SHLA when it was concluded that the site is suitable and also deliverable for up to 10 dwellings. It was also allocated through the draft island planning strategy. Through both processes, it was accepted that the site can accommodate contextual road frontage development, but stressed the importance of restraining the westerly extent of housing, including the provision of landscape buffers to safeguard the setting of the Jordan Valley. This is our second application for 6 dwellings, with the first scheme rejected on grounds relating to housing mix and scale. We have engaged positively with the case officer and held pre-application discussions. Throughout this ongoing dialogue, the LPA has never ruled out the principle and has actually been encouraging of bringing forward the right scheme. We are pleased that the approach taken, including the extensive discussions with officers, has manifested itself into a strong recommendation for approval. We appreciate the feelings of the Parish Council and local community about the landscape setting in the Jordan Valley and the importance of maintaining a meaningful gap between the settlements of Gurnard and Cowes. We have followed the advice of officers by designing this as a road frontage development, continuing the linear arrangement of the 3 neighbouring dwellings immediately to the south. We have reduced the westerly extent of the site so that the rear boundary extends no further into the valley than the existing neighbouring housing, and similarly no further west than the approved and almost completed housing development of 10 dwellings to the north, known as the Dottons. We have also shown landscape buffers along the western and northern edges of the development in order to provide a natural transition between the proposed gardens and adjoining farmland, whilst most importantly safeguarding the setting of the Jordan Valley. When stood within Tuttons Hill and looking north through the Jordan Valley, the proposed scheme will not be seen as jutting awkwardly into the green gap, as it will be contained on precisely the same line as the existing housing fronting onto Bering Road. To sum up this issue, it is most pertinent to quote from the planning inspector when he allowed the nearby Place Road housing scheme. He said, "Due to its position, the proposed development would not result in Cowes and Gurnard becoming contiguous. Indeed, even if the site is part of the Jordan Valley, there would still be a meaningful separation between them, such that they would still be individual entities. Overall, it would not lead to adjoining settlements coalescing or the gap between them reducing to such an extent that their distinctiveness would be seriously eroded. This very same conclusion can be reached in this case. Since the first scheme was refused, we have significantly scaled down the development. We have reduced the amount of floor space by 35%, which in turn has resulted in a mix of modest dwellings that would be spatially arranged with generous gaps in between. There'd be 2 modest 2-bedroom bungalows, 2 chalet bungalows and 2 low-hung 1.5-storey houses. The layout, plot sizes, design and gaps between the buildings will comfortably integrate with the characteristics that define Bering Road. The applicants are highly reputable developers who have created a quality mix of housing on Off-Place Road. To demonstrate local demand for additional new housing, the applicants confirm that 36 of 42 houses recently sold were to local residents, and of these, 70% were from Gurnard and Cowes. 75% of the next phase were reserved by locals before construction commenced. We are able to reassure the Planning Committee that this is a high quality submission of a reduced scale, attractive design and including a mix of property types to deliver much needed housing on the island where the build out rate is currently only 54% of what it should be. Despite local concerns, the proposed development would not bring the settlements of Cowes and Gurnard closer together, and the landscape setting in the Jordan Valley will be safeguarded. As such, we have essentially given members good reason to support this scheme, on the basis that the proposal includes all of the traits that provide for sustainable development without creating significant and demonstrable adverse impacts. It is therefore respectfully requested that permission is granted in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Andrew. Waiting to go red. Now, Councillor Fuller, as local member, you have 5 minutes.
Chairman, thank you for your indulgence in allowing this very finely balanced planning application for development of Bering Road on this important green gap that exists between Cowes and Gurnard to be considered by the Planning Committee. Following the representation made by Gurnard's Parish Council, members and officers will appreciate the significance of this planning application and the importance of Gurnard's neighbourhood plan for safeguarding this location. Gurnard Parish Council has already raised the importance of Policy E1 of Gurnard's neighbourhood plan, which incorporated within our plan precisely to protect areas of strategic landscape importance, most notably the Jordan Valley. Mr. White mentioned just now that this will not bring the development Cowes any closer to Gurnard, but the fact that you are building 6 new properties on a greenfield site, I would very much dispute that. In respect to this, I add recognition of section 15 of National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 170, whereby it is stated planning policies and decisions should contribute to enhance the natural and local environment by protecting and enhancing valued landscapes, and B, recognising the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside. In respect of the National Planning Policy Framework's view and value of neighbourhood plans, it states in paragraph 13, neighbourhood plans should support the delivery of strategic policies contained in local plans or spatial development strategies and should shape and direct development that is outside of these strategic policies. It does. 14B, the neighbourhood plan contains policies and allocations to meet the identified housing requirement. It does. In recent years, before Gurnard Neighbourhoods Plan was adopted, development was allowed to take place that has impacted upon both the environmental as well as heritage assets our plans seek to protect. One example of how this failed was at the neighbouring Dottons. What we have seen is that acceptance of previous plans took away forever the landscape character of the oldest building there is in Gurnard, Dottons Farm and its barns. This is a travesty in the fact that this was allowed to happen. At one time, this important heritage asset could be viewed from Bering Road and Tuttons Hill, but no longer is this possible. If this development is permitted in its current form, the same could be said for the loss of the landscape character of the Jordan Valley. Those things that the Island Plan and the NPPT ought to have protected was lost. Gurnard's neighbourhood plan, as I tell local residents, has so far worked well and mitigated against further losses, and my community remains hopeful that today's planning committee will not allow any further nibbling away in accordance with the NPPF and our island plan at what remains of that green space that lies between Cowes and Gurnard. Today's further reduction of by 45% of the green space within the western section of Bering Road is something residents ask the planning committee to reconsider and not let happen. From my perspective, I know that officers will feel that 6 units in this location will make little difference, but this is six units on top of 230 permitted in the last 10 years before our plan was adopted. Please note, in the future, there is currently 1 live application for 14 plus 27 more units and the potential for dozens more to come in areas of less valued landscape locations upstream on the Jordan. In respect to this bigger live application, no call-in was requested, which demonstrates locally the pragmatism which my community has called upon with these proposals. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Can I ask you to turn the camera off? Trying to get the red line. Before we go on to the officer to respond to those, I'd like to just address the issue of the 5-year land supply. There have been 2 appeal court judgments on this, the Appeal Investments judgment and the Gladman Development judgment, that clarify somewhat that's the situation with 5-year land supply. Can I ask Ollie Bolter to just update us on that?
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. Well, as members are aware and would have seen from the officer's report, the council is under a national presumption in favour of sustainable development due to lack of a 5-year land supply and also housing delivery. And in light of this, under national policy, these policies that are relevant to housing may be considered out of date and therefore not relevant to the determination of planning applications. The Court of Appeal cases that Chairman has just referred to have been officers have been mindful of these decisions, and I think it's worth just highlighting to members that the Court of Appeal in this case, amongst other things, the key to interpreting paragraph 11D of the NPPF and in reference to the tilted balance is that whether a policy became out of date, and if so, with what consequences, were matters of pure planning judgment, not depending on issues of legal interpretation. So what that essentially means for us in our daily decision making is, yes, we have to be mindful of the fact that we cannot demonstrate a 5-year land supply or meet the housing delivery test, but that does not mean that we automatically means that we have to then approve all applications for housing. So what I would remind members of is the fact that officers have considered this and borne that in mind when coming at the recommendation that you have seen in front of you in your reports. I think hopefully that provides some further information, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ollie. Can I ask Sarah to respond to the comments made so far?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to come back on some of the points. I'm not going to linger on other points because I think that a number of the matters are covered within the report in quite a lot of detail. So I don't propose to respond to every issue that was raised during the public consultation period. I would draw members' attention to paragraph 6.29 to 6.34 of the officer report, which does go into detail in relation to the assessment that officers have made in regards to the impact on the Jordan Valley. And so hopefully that will give that context in response to the concerns that have been raised by both the parish council and the local member in that regard. The only other point I wanted to raise, just for a point of clarity, is that officers do acknowledge that the Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan does identify potential housing sites. Obviously, in terms of timescales, since that plan was made, none of those sites have come forward, as far as I'm aware, in terms of the potential for development of them. And there has been a relatively substantial time lag in that regard. So in that relationship, we have to consider potentially other sites that would come forward. I'd also highlight that out of the 3, potentially 4 sites that have been identified, one of those sites is Gurnard Pines Holiday Village. That is primarily still a holiday site, and therefore there is a question over the appropriacy of that going to pure residential and the loss to the tourism industry of the facilities that that site provides. And so I just would ask that that's considered in relation to both the fact that 1, those sites haven't come forward, and 2, one of those sites is Gurnard Pines itself, and therefore there's a question over suitability in that regard. I just wanted to highlight those points. Otherwise, I think the officer report covers all other matters in relation to the actual impact of the developments proposed and the sustainability of the site in relation to that balance of decision and the housing need that we currently face. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll now open the meeting up for discussion. Has anyone got any questions? Councillor Churchman and then Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to be quite clear that this development is outside the settlement area. That's my first question.
It's immediately adjacent to.
Immediately adjacent to, right. Well, I know the rules about that. I really wonder why parish and town councils bother to do a neighbourhood plan if it is subsequently ignored. So that is a statement, not a question. I would like to know, further down the road we have another development. I might say I got in my car this morning and went down to look at the site because I found the plans very difficult to appreciate. Had a good look, drove down the road to look at the current site of where they're building houses. I think it's called the Dottons, what an odd name. And I would like to ask Sarah, because I can't remember how many houses are being built there and of what capacity, if she has the thing to hand. I think my biggest objection to this development is the fact it's 6 houses on a really lovely greenfield site. And what on earth are we destroying a greenfield site for when there are other sites within the area have been put forward? I really am quite at the sort of, I just can't understand why we're considering it. I see 2 previous applications have been refused anyway. We're now on to the 3rd one. I just would like to bring forward a couple of points came up at my Children's Services committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, where it talks about the demographics of the island and why this is relevant to this particular application is because second homes spring to mind and retired people coming to live here. At the moment, we do not build housing for the people who already live on the island, and I find that of great concern. And these 6 bungalows, and saying a third of them are 2-bedroom, which means 2 houses out of 6. I just, well, we won't go any further on that. I think my tone implies what I mean. However, if we want this island to grow, then we need to build houses to encourage businesses to build or even to come here. But to do that, they have to have a workforce. And I can't see that these 6 houses are going to bring any contribution to building what I would see as a workforce for the Isle of Wight. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I have Councillor Howes, Councillor Beston and Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one question first. Would anybody be able to tell me, they were talking about how short we were of the number of houses that we should have according to the government. But how many houses are still outstanding on applications that have already been filed with the council and been approved, but not actually started? So there must be quite a few. I mean, we saw 1 or 2 at Ryde that are large housing developments that haven't even been started yet, and yet they're telling us we're short. So if all these houses that have got planning permission were developed, where would we be then? And secondly, I must say that I agree with the last speaker, was that when I was young, a long time ago, when I was young, the actual island and the island councillors were very keen to support island residents. Now we seem to build to attract people to come to the island to retire, which is not helping development of the houses. And with us becoming a free port or part of a free port, we should start looking at businesses as well, and not just providing retirement homes for people who are coming from the mainland. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. I'm saying we need to balance it out and to make sure we keep our young people on the island and not push them away because they've got nowhere to live. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Beston.
I'm sorry, Chairman.
Oh, do you want the answer?
I didn't have an answer.
There are
my question.
There are certainly large developments that have been approved. I mean, certainly outline and full planning permission for the developments in Cowes, developments in others. Ollie, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Howe, in relation to your question,
sir,
where sites have planning permission that meet the criteria, they are included in what's called our 5-year land supply. And that was something that I've already touched on already. Now, what we have to when we include those, even those permissions don't total enough to where we should be against national policy. So we take those into account where we can and as far as appropriate in our calculation, but even that in itself isn't enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie.
Happy with that, John? Councillor Howe?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Beston, Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wait to go live. Is that live now, Chairman? Yes, we're live now. I'll be brief, I'll be succinct, and it is relating to this particular application. And it refers to sections 6.21 and 6.22. And I use the word setback, proposed setback. So we're looking at a proposed new setback of between 13 to 20 metres of the new 6 particular buildings. Can I just confirm with either Ollie or Sarah that new proposed setback will actually bring the site of the new proposed development to accord with the existing properties along Baring Road? Thank you.
Chairman, Chairman, happy to come in if you want me to on that one. Thank you.
Yes, please, Sarah.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Yes, in answer to that question, I can confirm that effectively the positioning of the properties has been such to follow the line of the existing properties along that side of Bering Road, both in essence in terms of their front and their rears. So it would follow along that building line that's set by the existing properties. The proposed layout, actually, the setback is staggered as you go down the road because there is a curvature in Bering Road. And what those units do is they set them back. They start at the point of the existing neighbouring property and then follow that line through. So when you get to the end property, it's actually even further set back because it's following the line of the buildings, not the curvature of the road. So you get that space at the frontage for landscaping and the proposed parking areas. I can share the layout plan if necessary again. So hopefully that answers that question. One thing I did want to say, if I could, in terms of answers to previous questions, in relation to comments from previous speakers, I think one question Councillor Churchman asked related to the Dottons development. In terms of that question, I can confirm, Councillor Churchman, that there are 10 dwellings at Dottons. I think that answers the specific question you raised in that regard. The other point I just wanted to raise in relation to comments in terms of the properties and who they're being provided for. That's one question in terms of, I think that actually one of the public speakers gave some interesting facts in terms of the percentage of units within other developments in this area that have actually been sold to island residents. And that's one thing I suppose I wanted to highlight, in that there is no evidence to say that these units wouldn't be going to island residents in that instance. The proposal does incorporate a range of different property sizes, so 2-bed, 3-bed and 4-bed, in order to ensure that there is that mix on site to comply with policy DM3. I also wanted to highlight in relation to the neighbourhood plan, one key element that is referred to in the officer report that we do take into consideration is that the plan does stipulate that proposals should demonstrate that they provide a housing type, design and tenure that meets the need. Obviously there's a question over need in relation to the current housing delivery, but it also goes on to say, in particular, the need for housing suited to the needs of older people. So what this development does, it provides a range. It provides the bungalow, single story units for those older people and the needs of those older people, but it also provides accommodation that has first floor within it for families. So it does provide a range to meet that requirement. So hopefully that explains why the development has included 2 bungalows within its overall provision of units. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's a very interesting development, this one. The reason it's come to committee is because it's been called by the local member because it's contrary to the local neighbourhood plan. I think that's where I want to focus my comments, because a neighbourhood plan is a massive undertaking by a local community. I think this one took between 5 and 6 years. It's very, very expensive, but also has to go through various tests. It's not just a NIMBY where we want stuff or we don't want stuff. It has to follow strict guidance, and then it has to be adopted by the community for a referendum, which is why in Newport it was such a large undertaking for the space we're talking about. We thought at the time this wasn't something we could do back in 2010, 2011. So I applaud Gernard for taking on this task and delivering the needs, delivering the wishes in an appropriate way through this plan and having it pass the test and go through the referendum. So there we have a neighbourhood plan, but also they have offered up. I mean, I'll just say 3 sites now, because we heard that one site is going to Pine, so 3 other sites in this area that would be appropriate for housing. So I can't dismiss this at all. This pragmatism that the local councillors have talked about, and being actively involved in the future of their space. I can't ignore it, I'm afraid. I mean, it's a lovely development. I just think it's in the wrong place, and I really have to take heed of the neighbourhood plan in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. I don't think there were any questions in there. Councillor Hollis.
Yes, first of all, right. Okay. Yes, first of all, let's just go back to this, the development map that's in the Island Core strategy. The map, the development map, quite clearly does not have the road that this is on in as the boundary. Other places on the map on page 115 has roads as boundary. This is the road is not the boundary for the development area. The development area is to the east of this boundary. Therefore, it is the road that is adjacent to, not the land adjacent to the road on the west. And if you look up in the English dictionary, adjacent, it says lying near and contiguous. And if you look up contiguous, it says adjoining, adjacent, contiguity is in contact. So I think that the interpretation of adjacent has over the years been misinterpreted, and I know that there is some moves to, when we eventually get round to a new island plan, clear up this nonsense. Otherwise, what is the point in having the Jordan Valley separated out on the development plan, the development policy? And that is not in SP1, it's an area action plan. Secondly, I would quite agree with Councillor Jones-Evans that it says that in point 69 of the report, it says the parish council has now taken its own housing needs survey and account, etc., which is all part of its plan, and it's now 8 years old, and therefore considered a long time the council housing needs. He said, I think that should say only 8 years old. Of course, it takes years to put a plan together, and it doesn't happen to just suddenly change overnight. I've also made a list of all the places on the island where we have planning permission given. Pennyfeathers, how many houses in Pennyfeathers? 900? Can't remember. 900. You've got Rosemary Vineyard in the pipeline. Cowes Place Road is not finished. You have that. There are other developments on Ryde. You've got Harcourt Sands. You've got Bryston. You've got Shoulder of Mutton in Newport. You've got Horsebridge Hill. You've got a myriad of smaller applications. You've got applications in Totland. I do not believe that actually, if you add them all up, that they come to a low figure. But having said that, I can't really see the change. If you stand back and look at what we're being asked to pass, it is just a piece of ribbon development. And ribbon development is something that all planning authorities try and avoid at all costs. It's just an encroachment into the Jordan Valley. The Jordan Valley, that was put into that plan for very, very good reasons. I don't think it passes DM2 because it has no sense of place. It is out of place. And I think it fails on that. It hasn't, to my mind, hasn't passed DM12. So I can't support this, despite what officers have said. I can't see how it has absolutely changed from the original application. There's been some tinkering, but it hasn't really changed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hollis. Councillor Jones-Evans said that she said about a comment. Yeah, I was clarifying that you did only make a comment, that I hadn't missed a question. Ollie Bolter would like to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to pick up on a number of comments made by members as part of the debate, and I'm going to go back to some very early points in the conversation as well. I think it's really important to pick up on the statement or the view that neighbourhood plans are ignored as a starter. I think it's important that I would like to remind members that neighbourhood plans are not ignored. they are taken into account in our decision making, and rightly so, and used to inform our establishing the planning balance when we consider applications. Members will of course be aware of this from our assessment and effectively our deliberations as contained in the officer's report. That was first point. Second point that picks up on a number of comments from members is I think it's also important to recognise and to elaborate from one of Sarah's earlier responses, is that the neighbourhood plan does not designate sites for development. Rather, it identifies sites that the community would prefer to see development located due to the lower landscape impacts of those sites. And that's a different position to find ourselves in. The picking up on Councillor Hollis's sort of question or views around the immediately adjacent the settlement boundary location, and I think it's worth just reflecting on the practical application of that. So, as I'm sure members are aware, that policy, this policy approach has been in place since April 2012. And our interpretation and application of the phrase immediately adjacent has been consistent throughout that period, and it isn't the first time that there have been debates around where references to the words like contiguous have been used. As you will see from the officer report, we are comfortable in terms of the proposed application site and how that sits in relation to the settlement boundary. What I would also do is remind or highlight to members that as part of this deliberation, where we may be considering that certain policies are out of date, if that is the case, then the actual application of the settlement boundary may well also be out of date. And what our discussion should be focusing on is this a sustainable location? My last point that I'd just like to raise is in relation to a statement in terms of area action plans or AAPs, and I would just remind members that whilst AAPs were published, they were published as draft consultation documents and have not been through any formal adoption process and therefore carry no weight when determining an application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ollie. Councillor Cameron, George.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got one question, and it's similar to the West White. We've got loads of bits of land that's been identified as suitable or possible housing sites. Has this site specifically been identified as a housing site? That's the question.
Ollie or Sarah, would you like to answer that?
Chair, yes, so I can confirm that the site is proposed for allocation through the draft island planning strategy, although I would remind members it's the same point that I've just made about the area action plan. The draft island planning strategy has not been through the significant amount of formal process and testing that it would need to do, and as such carries no weight. But that is an aside, I would suggest, members, in terms of your deliberation around the sustainability of that site as an appropriate site for development.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Churchman.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, when you look at the photographs, this particular site is part of quite a large green field area. I know there are a line of trees which looks as though it divides it in half. And of course, my concern is not only if planning permission was granted, we get 6 houses there, but of course, does this mean or make it more likely that the rest of the area going down Baring Road would then come up for a planning application. I know there is such a thing as there is no precedent in planning, but if you take that field out of that farm's holding, does it make the farm unviable? In which case, do we then get more planning applications for the whole thing? And I agree with Councillor Hollis, being married to a retired chartered surveyor, in his case, the worst scenario was ribbon development. Thank you, Chair.
Oli Bolter.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to pick up on that, whilst members may have views on types of development and what is or isn't appropriate, the question in front of us, or the application in front of us, is the issue that needs to be determined. Members should not be speculating on what would happen in the future should an application be permitted. If an application is submitted in the future, that will be dealt with on its own merits and assessed in its own way. What you will see from the officer report that's in front of you is that consideration has been given in terms of what officers had identified in the presentation as those other key views and gaps within that existing Jordan Valley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hollis. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. If settlement boundaries and area action plans, which are part of the same thing, it's on page 115 of the core strategy. If they don't exist, then how can we be told that this is adjacent to it? It either exists or it doesn't. So I think that really needs clearing up.
Do you want to address that, Ollie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just bringing up my copy of the core strategy, so apologies if it takes a while for that to appear. Now, the reference given there by Councillor Hollis in relation to planning policy AAP1 of the adopted core strategy, the importance of that policy and the issue to note is that that policy is there not essentially to aid the determination of planning applications, but is there essentially as a framing planning policy, giving the strategic remit for the further documentation that had been intended to be proposed at that time. So that was a suite of area action plans, which work was done, which was then subsequently consumed by the emerging draft island planning strategy. So that's that point. The second point then, going back to settlement boundaries and the reality or otherwise of them, as has been made by officers in terms of the presentation and the subsequent references, the discussion I think needs to be focused around whether this is a sustainable location for development in its entirety, rather than necessarily is it immediately adjacent or not a boundary, which in itself may be part of a policy that may well not be considered up to date, especially if it was subject to any further challenge. Thank you, Chair.
Did that answer your question, Councillor Hollis?
No, I don't think so. We either have we have used settlement boundaries as the rationale for passing and adjacent to, etc., for passing or not wishing to pass planning applications in the past. We refer to whether it being outside that settlement boundary, and those settlement boundaries have been devised for good reason, I can't believe that, you know, from 2012 now, we've never got round to actually ratifying that through a number of councils. But all sorts of other things I think do apply anyway, because there's reference to the value of the Jordan Valley. So the Jordan Valley is part of or is bounded by settlement boundaries, and so therefore it must have value. And so I will take it further when we come to finishing. Unless you want me to do that now.
Well, there's no one else has asked to speak at present, so continue.
Right. I do understand, having read the report, that in theory progress has been made with this, but it's not hard and fast. It is an officer's opinion as to whether the degree of harm. Of course, they're professional, but we have a committee so that we can look at it and perhaps look at it with fresh eyes and say, does this do harm? I don't think this still passes DM2. DM2 Part 4, where it needs to complement in DM2. The Council will support proposals of high quality and inclusive design to protect and conserve and enhance our existing environment. And it needs to complement the character of the surrounding area, including defined locally distinctive areas. And this Jordan Valley is a locally distinctive area. And I don't think by building there that, I mean, it's quite a long stretch of that road, that enhances it. So I think it fails on that, just as it has done in the past. And then we go to DM12, which is referred to, and DM12 is protecting our landscape. If it was just a field, on the edge of Parkhurst Prison, that isn't exactly the greatest piece of landscape, but this is a very important piece of landscape. And I think we should be enhancing or promoting enhancing the links between designated sites and their landscapes and local designations. And so I think it fails DM12 on part 1 and part 3. So there we are. That is those two reasons. I'll say no more.
Thank you very much. I have no more requests for debate or comment. Would someone like to move a motion to either approve or refuse this application? Councillor Churchman. You're muted.
Sorry, Chair. I would like to propose a motion to refuse the application, and I will steal Councillor Hollis's comments because I didn't note them all down. So, but anyway, I propose the motion to refuse the application, Chair. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hollis. If there's no more requests for debate, Ben, you want to speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Just very, very quickly, I'll just check in with colleagues from Planning Services to ensure that we're clear the reasons for the proposed refusal. So I'd be grateful if planning colleagues could just confirm we're clear on the reason for refusal here. Thank you, Chairman.
So can our proposer and seconder identify their reasons for refusal, and then officers can try and produce something that reflects that.
Would you like me to do that, Chairman?
Fine, go ahead, Councillor Hollis.
Well, I said DM2, part 4, because it fails to complement the character of the surrounding area It's not in the conservation, etc. But because of supplementary planning documents that define local distinctive areas, and I think the Jordan Valley is all recognised as a local distinctive area. It's been nibbled away, particularly on the Gurnard side, substantially, and I think this is just starting the other side, or adding to the nibbling on this side. So that's DM2, and also DM12. I said parts 1 and 3. DM12 says the council will support proposals that conserve, enhance, promote landscape. And does it protect the landscape? No, it doesn't. And does it maintain the links between designated sites? Well, in this case, designated sites is partly Cowes and partly the Gurnard through the Jordan Valley as a local designation. No, it doesn't. So I mean, I may be misinterpreting that, but I don't think so. But anyway, there we are.
Okay. Would you be happy to add to that contrary to the neighbourhood plan?
Yes.
Officers, do you have enough there to sort of draft us a...
I'm very grateful to Councillor Hollis for his clarification there, and I suspect that Sarah Wilkinson is about to assist the committee with some wording picking up on all of those points, Chairman. So if it's okay with you, I'll pass to her. But thank you, Councillor Hollis.
Would officers like a few minutes to consider that?
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm happy to because obviously Mr. Gard is clear that thankfully Councillor Hollis was relatively clear with his position, so I think I've managed to pull his points into a kind of reason for refusal wording while he's been speaking. So if I read this out, and then if he is able to confirm whether that sufficiently covers all the points he raised, or whether there's anything that he wishes me to add to it. So I've got at the moment the proposed development fails to complement the character of the surrounding area, particularly the distinctive Jordan Valley, contrary to policy E1 of the Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan, and fails to protect the landscape character of the area, contrary to DM2 and DM12 of the core strategy. Councillor Hollis, does that cover your points sufficiently?
Well, I think it does, because I'm biased, but it's whether I hope you do as well. But I think that's fair comment. I say I'm biased because I put that proposal, that it's what I found after looking at this proposal. I don't mean I'm biased towards the application or against it, but there we are. Anyway,
I think it's, Ben may want to comment on this, but I think from my perspective, I think that the point effectively is that I believe this is Councillor Churchman's motion, which you are seconded and have offered to provide the wording for that motion. So I think what I would, I've provided that wording based on what you've said, which I consider to be it raises policy references, so that's fine. So I think I would probably put the question back to you, Councillor Hollis, and to Councillor Churchman to clarify whether Councillor you are happy with that wording, and to move that as your motion, and whether Councillor Hollis, you are happy to second that as the proposed wording for the reason for refusal.
Councillor Churchman.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Very kind of you, and Richard, as usual, your depth of knowledge. I presume I cannot add it is outside the settlement boundary, because we did talk about this, and the fact because it's adjacent, that allows it. In fact, though, can one still at that point, although it is adjacent, but as Councillor Hollis pointed out, it's across the road. Thank you.
If Chairman, you're happy for me to come back on that point. Yes, ultimately, it's the decision of the member putting forward the resolution. However, officers would strongly recommend against referencing that it is outside on the basis that policy specifically allows it to be immediately adjacent. We have always accepted immediately adjacent referring to the opposite side of the road, and therefore that is a consistent policy interpretation since 2012. Also, as Ollie has referenced throughout this meeting, there are questions over whether that element of SP1 is out of date in relation to the housing delivery test and the need for us to provide the level of housing. So I would strongly recommend against the reference of the settlement boundary within the reason for refusal. I think it would weaken the argument, in my opinion.
I would agree with you, Sarah. I think Councillor Churchman, I'd be a little bit unhappy to put that in. I think it says enough with DM2 and DM12.
Sarah?
Yes.
Could you reread the wording?
I can. That might give an opportunity for both Councillor Churchman and Councillor Hollis to confirm that they are happy with that wording also. So, as worded currently, the proposed development fails to complement the character of the surrounding area, particularly the distinctive Jordan Valley, contrary to E1 of the Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan, and fails to protect the landscape character of the area, contrary to DM2 and DM12.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Councillor Fuller would just like to comment.
No.
Chairman, thank you for letting me in. When the Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan went to our planning consultant that drafted the scheme, he did raise concerns about the settlement boundary, and he did raise concerns that that immediately adjacent to was something he hadn't heard anywhere else in the country. What I would say is within the Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan is that within the neighbourhood plan, the development is actually outside the settlement boundary. And if you're looking at using the Gurnard Neighbourhood Plan as one of the planning documents, I would suggest that that policy is outlined as being a reference point from the planning consultant used by Gurnard Parish Council. Thank you.
That's up to the proposer and nominator and seconder, but the I think the advice of the officer would still apply.
Can't twist it like that.
Yeah. So, Councillor Churchman and Councillor Hollis, are you happy with the wording as read out by the officer?
Yes.
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you.
Can we now go to the vote then, please?
Chairman, just for clarification, this will be a named vote because it's against the officer's recommendation.
Are you going to read out the names?
I will, yes.
Chair, may I just ask that we repeat that we are voting for refusal of this application?
If you vote for, you're voting for refusal. If you vote against, you're opposing the refusal, or you can abstain. So we should really only hear for, against, or abstain.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Councillor Beston.
Abstain.
Councillor Cameron.
For.
Councillor Churchman.
For.
Councillor Hastings.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Jones Evans.
For.
Councillor Tyndall.
For.
Councillor Price.
For.
Hooray!
Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Clerk.
Abstain.
That's 8 for and 2 abstentions and none against.
So the motion is carried and planning permission is refused.
Well done, Richard.
Would members like to take a short break before we go on to the next application?
Yes, please, if that's possible, Chairman.
Yes, please, as well from me.
Yeah.
Yes, please, for me.
So can we take a 10-minute break before we go on to the next, consider the next application?
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Chairman. Thank you.
Can I just remind members that even though we've taken a 10-minute adjournment, members of the public can still hear what's being said.
Hello, Chairman.
Hi there. Is everyone back?
Yes.
Chairman, before we start, can we just do a roll call to make sure we've got everyone?
So
Yeah.
we could just turn our cameras on.
Councillor Beston?
Chairman.
Councillor Cameron? Yeah, I can see you. Councillor Churchman, I can see you. Councillor Fuller?
Yeah.
Councillor Hastings?
Yes, Chairman.
I can see Councillor Hollis. Councillor Howe? Yeah, I can see you. Councillor Jones-Evans, I can see you. Councillor Price, I can see you. Councillor Tindall?
Yes, I'm here.
And I'm here too, yep. We're all present and correct. If we go on to the applications, 20/00455/FUL and 20/00456 LBC, both relate to the Old Town Hall in Grafton Street in Sandown. It would be perverse to approve one and decline the other, so I intend to take both of these applications together, and we'll move on to the officer presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just sharing the presentation now.
Yep. Thank you, Stuart. I will get out of the way.
Can members see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. So as the Chairman's explained, the application relates to the Old Town Hall in Sandown. It's a Grade 2 listed building that's located approximately in the middle of Grafton Street, which is on the western side of the Town Hall site. To the east at the rear is Grafton Lane, which runs through to Fitzroy Street. Melville Street is located to the south, and Leeds Street and the Broadway. So the application is relates to the Town Hall, which is a Grade 2 listed building, and it's worth noting that the site is not within the Sandown Conservation Area. So the Town Hall is located in a residential area of Sandown. It's surrounded by residential properties. If I just take members over some of the characteristics of the site very briefly, there is a frontage here that's open to Grafton Street, which is mainly used for parking at the moment. The old fire station access is here, and I'll come on to the various elements of the building in a minute. There is a covered walkway that runs between Grafton Street through to Grafton Lane, and that is part of the adopted highway and is used to reverse to both streets. Turning over to the various components of the site, again, we have the open frontage and main entrance through here. We have the main central hall building, which is through here. To the south of that is a later fire station addition. To the north, we have a lower north wing, which was added slightly later in the main hall. And further north to that, we've got an early 20th century Edwardian caretaker's cottage, which has been extended to the rear. Through here, we've got the original stables buildings, and that was later possibly used as a mortuary as well. And there is a green building which we'll come through in a minute and have a better look at, which is a later shed, post-war shed, and later been used as a scout hut. There is a stone wall that runs through here, which is part of the listing, and that is the original stone wall and rear access into the yard where the stables were located. So just going through some components of the site and the buildings. I say I've put this map up for members to act as a sort of a memoir as we go through some of these slides, just to explain the existing building. And I say you can see the main hall building in the light purple, and then to the east of that we've got the lean-to extensions that are later. We've also got the fire station addition that's highlighted yellow here, and a later extension that is highlighted in orange, light red. And there's some other later additions through here, a lean-to fire escape, an extension to the rear of the Edwardian cottage. The Edwardian cottage is highlighted in light blue, and the part of the lower north wing to the town hall is highlighted in green through here. And again, there's some later additions at the back that are highlighted in a different colour. And so these red circles indicate points of access through from the original hall building into the later additions on the north side of the building. And so if you have a look at the elevation drawing through here, I've colour coded to time with the map, but you'll see we've got the early 20th century cottage, which is down here as well. We've got the original hall building, higher hall building, and the later north wing, which is set down slightly lower, but again replicates the style of the town hall. And we've got the slightly later fire station building. Members will note that it's two-storey currently, but from this image below, you'll see a 1907 image of the fire station, and obviously it's been added to at a later date in terms of a second story. And you'll note that there's been some changes to the treatment of the elevations. And if I can just draw members' attention to the arches here, which were the original, and as you'll note, there's been a later adaptation here. So this current arrangement is not original to the single-storey part of the fire station building. Sorry, just to take members through, obviously the important significance of this front is its neoclassical architecture, and if I can just draw members' attention to some of the features, which is the fluted pilasters and columns, the pediment gables, and they're replicated over the windows, and you can also see the fire station has tried to be sympathetic to that neoclassical architecture, and members will also note the tented canopy and columns at the front which demarcate the front entrance, which is shown here. If I take it bit by bit, this is the caretaker's cottage. So again, the front of the caretaker's cottage is here. Members will note the tight relationship with number 11 Grafton Lane. And again, that's the blue and the red elements that are circled here. This is the elevation that fronts onto 11 Grafton Lane, as it currently is. And you'll note the 1980s extension here. And from approximately about here, this is also a later addition, this element here, with the original cottage being the section that's highlighted in blue. Again, just quickly, some rear elevation of the caretaker's building here, which is this bit here. So this is the flat roof, which is through here, and this gable here is this gable here. And again, just looking internal to the site, members will see the elevation that actually faces from this direction. You'll also notice an image, and we'll come onto it in a bit anyway, but there's a later lean-to that's shown through here, and there's some later additions through here to the north wing of the building. North wing is here, and that is this green section through here. This image just shows the tightness of the boundary. So this is the entrance onto Grafton Lane, boundary wall with number 11, and this is the side wall of the caretakers, which is this here, and for members that's through here. So that alleyway is running through here. Turning to the fire station element at the south side of the building, this is the front of the fire station building, which is currently two-storey, and again you'll see the original sort of footprint here of the two-storey element and a later addition at the back. Members can just note that these orange sections here, which notate to this element here, this is proposed removal as part of the scheme, which we'll come on to in a little bit. Again, just the yellow section highlighting the fire station element, and this red section is just highlighting the current fire station door openings, which are subject to alteration as part of the proposal. Again, in terms of the photos, we have the alleyway that's through here. That runs through the south part of the site down to Grafton Lane. And again, at the back, this is the extension at the back of the fire station building, which is subject to proposed removal. We turn on to the hall and the lower north wing of the building. So the main central hall is here, and the lower hall is the lower part of the hall is through here. Again, as I've already said, this is the lower part of the hall through here with its later additions. And again, a zoomed up image of the back of that lower wing is through here. There is actually another lean-to extension hidden behind here, which you can't see. Unfortunately, it's quite tucked away, but I'll show you that in later elevation drawings. This is an image of the south side of the hall, and members will note that this faces onto the alleyway between Grafton Street and Grafton Lane. And this is a blocked-in opening through here, which is obviously not original. And later, this is the steps up to the back of the fire station extension that is proposed for removal. And again, through here, some images. This is the back of the hall building. This is a this was damaged in the 1980s as part of the 1987 storms, been rebuilt later following that damage. Here is the north side of the hall building, and members will note the green shed through here and the listed wall at the back and the original opening into the rear yard. And again, tucked behind here, you can just make out the top of it here below the windows. This is the fire escape lean-to that is also proposed for removal as part of this application, and members will also note the original stables building here that juts into that lean-to. The original stables building comes through here and joins into that lean-to, which is through here. If we look at the outbuildings and the rear stone boundary wall, that is what is demarcated through here. The green is the timber shed building, which members can see through here and through here on the image, and that abuts the stone boundary wall. Members will note that the original stone boundary wall has been adapted with a yellow brick coursing above it and to support the green shed building. And members will also note that there's a block infill the original stables through here. The stables building runs through here and is marked in red, and this element has been adapted originally from original and is thought to have been used as a town mortuary briefly for Sandown. Again, this is the mortuary building that's through here, which also originally formed part of the original stables to the town hall. So in terms of the planning and listed building consent proposals, the proposal is to retain the frontage for parking, to retain a 229 square metre hall to be used for community purposes. That would retain an office here and toilet facilities. The fire station would be converted into a two-storey house. There would be a masonette proposed over 2 floors on the ground and first floor here at the back of the building. The caretaker's cottage would also be converted into a 2-bed house. The lower wing here would be converted at ground and first floor into 1-bed flats. And the proposal here is to provide 2-bed, 2-storey houses within the rear yard following demolition of the listed stone wall and also the outbuildings, which were also part of the listing, but of lesser significance. And below the basement, which we'll come on to in a minute, there's also a proposal to put 3 1-bed flats underneath the hall and the masonette, which we'll come on to in just a minute. So in terms of conversion of the cottage, members will note the floor plans. The proposal was to take away the later additions at the back and to effectively internally convert it into a 2-bed cottage. Members will note the original, the staircases in the cottage would be removed, but these are not original or later, and new staircases would be put in. In terms of elevational treatments, members will note the existing across the top. Along the bottom shows the changes that are proposed to the building. So there would be some infilling of windows. There would be an existing window that would be refurbished through here and a new door opening through here. An existing window refurbished here and here. In terms of the back elevations, again, you'll notice changed fenestration to facilitate the proposed conversion. And again, this is the element internal to the site, showing the removal of those later additions. And again, some replacement windows through here. Moving on to the lower north wing, which is located back here in the building in grey. Again, the floor layouts here proposed to convert the ground and first floor into one-bed flats. And again, you'll notice and highlight here that this is the lean-to I talked about that was tucked away that would be removed. Looking at the proposed hall conversion, so this is the main central element through here. There are various components to this, as it is the main part of the building. But the proposal underneath at lower ground floor level towards the back is to provide one-bed apartments at lower ground floor level, and members will note that units 10 and 11 will be accessed off of the passageway. This is where that block infill that I showed you currently is off of that passageway, and also the other units would be accessed from the rear. As you can come into the rear and go up the stairs, that would allow access into the masonette that is proposed at the back at first and at ground and first floor level. Turning to the hall would be largely maintained as an open space. There's no plan changes here. What is proposed is some infilling of existing openings that link through into other parts of the building. So this is the opening that links through into the northern wing, and this opening here leads through into the lean-to fire extension, the fire escape extension that would be removed. So on the ground floor, you have the office and toilet facilities that would service the hall. And then on the upper floor, which is accessed from the north wing, you come in the entrance through here, up the stairs, and then into a first floor part of the hall, which is currently sectioned off from the main hall, and that would provide another one-bed unit within the hall. This is some photos of the interior of the hall for members. So as we come into the main entrance and as we come through into the main hall, members note the sizable windows, the decoration of the ceiling, and the general columns and decoration of the interior, notwithstanding the modern flooring. Again, looking at the other end of the hall, this is boarded up at the moment, and that's where the other side of that is where the flat at first floor level would be constructed. The other image to take a look at, this is the fire escape extension that members would have seen. And again, you can see the fenestration through here. That is proposed for removal. This is the entrance that would be blocked up from the hall into that fire escape. And then again, this is the original stairs that would lead from the north wing up to the first floor where the flat is proposed. This opening here at the moment is into the fire station element, which is proposed to be converted into a two-bed house, and that opening would also be blocked up. Members will note the modern ceiling detailing and fairly modern look in here, although the windows are original on this part of the building. If I can just take members back to the floor plans for the hall conversion, it is also proposed, following removal of the lean-to fire escape, to construct another two-storey addition extension through here on the side, and that would form a replacement fire escape from the rear of the hall, and you would then have access out onto Grafton Lane. Turn to conversion of the fire station at the south side. Again, this is the opening I've just showed you from the first floor of the hall up here. That would be closed off. The other opening down here at ground floor level would also be closed in. So this would be sectioned off from the main hall building. The rear elements here in the stairs that I showed you from the passageway will also be removed. And this gable end wall here will be rebuilt and some new windows installed. Again, the stairs would be taken out, but they're not original, and they would be replaced, and the general layout created to create the 2-bed house. In terms of just going through the elevations of the hall changes, this is the current existing elevation. Members will note that in terms of the front elevation will generally be redecorated and refurbished. The only real change will be the opening here, the fire station opening, which will be replaced with a triple group of windows, which would reflect the current first floor. And officers consider that would actually enhance the appearance of the front elevation. Turning to the side elevations, this is the elevation from the passageway, and I say this is as it exists. This is the extension at the back of the fire station and steps. This is the block infill that currently has a negative impact on the appearance of the building, and you will see that the proposal is to remove this, rebuild the parapet gable end wall, and then to reorder and infill with matching brickwork the side here, which would actually help with the basement units. So this would provide access into units 9 and 10, and provide additional light through some new window openings. There's also a new window opening proposed through here, and this window here would be removed. In terms of the interior side elevation, this is the lean-to, which would be removed, and this outline is the stables building, which would also be removed. Turning to the proposal, you'll notice that the new extension that's proposed for the fire escape is through here. This is the later, but past the existing lean-to additions on the side of the building that would be retained, and there are a proposal to put 2 new windows through here at low ground floor level, which will provide additional light into the basement units. Turning to the lower hall, this is the rear of the lower hall. So members will recall what I said, there was a lean-to element through here which was hidden. That is proposed for removal. This bit would be retained. Otherwise, there's very little change to the back of the lower north hall. This is the main rear hall that backs onto Grafton Lane. And again, there's very little change to this element other than the provision of the new fire escape extension, which will be constructed in brick and matching slate. Then turning to the rear of the fire station. So again, this is the access way through from Grafton Street through to Grafton Lane, and that is the current situation, and the steps and that will be removed. And this is how the gable end would appear once it's been restored. The proposal also involves the provision of 2 new houses. So the proposal would be to remove the existing stone wall and to put 2 new houses in. 2 new houses very similar in design to the existing cottages in Grafton Lane, and a similar scale, albeit lower. They would effectively be 6 metres to eaves, 8.5 metres to ridge, and effectively design and render with materials being reserved by condition for later approval, but it essentially would be sort of slate roofs and render to match the existing cottages adjacent. The rear elevation of those houses is shown through here. And again, this just shows the separation distance to 5 Grafton Lane, the neighbouring property to the north, which does have some windows, which is what these lines are, showing the 45 degrees from the proposed extension. And the boundary wall through is indicated through here. Turning to the proposed relationship with 5 Grafton Lane, members will note that the proposed houses are 2.6 metres at their closest point from Grafton Lane. There are some windows in this location for the bedroom and dining room, and they are 4.6 metres away from the returned and set in rear extension or rear element of the proposed houses, which is here. Turning to some photos showing the relationships with neighbours, this photo is taken across the hall here, across the frontage and driveway of number 11 Grafton Street. This is looking at the back of number 11 Grafton Street, so that is taken back here and looking through towards the back of this extension here is here. This is looking towards 5 Grafton Lane. So again, I'm looking back towards this element over here, and that window is set in here. Some images showing the current street scene from Grafton Lane. Again, this shows the stone wall which runs through here. The green building which we propose for removal is through here. And again, moving to looking opposite where the proposed houses would be. This is Grafton Lane through here, and then we're looking back towards the open parking areas and gardens of properties in Fitzroy Street that back onto Grafton Lane. And again, just to repeat some boundary treatments, again, this is the boundary wall that runs through from the access way through here. So that boundary wall runs through here. And again, this is showing the property on Grafton Lane. So this is number 5 Grafton Lane, and members will note the windows that are aspecting out over the boundary wall towards where the proposed houses are. This plan just denotes or is indicative in terms of how the site would be divided up. And members will note that essentially this would provide parking and access. There would be some space for the proposed house here and also for the proposed house here. There would be some defensible space provided for the basement units here and here, and some bin storage provided through here. Around here again, there would be some new boundary treatments which provide defensive space to the various units along this side of the building. The proposed houses would have their own curtilages, and again, the north wing, there would be some communal space through here. This is only indicative at the moment, and planning officers have recommended conditions that would control the detailing of these boundary treatments to provide suitable amenity space and defensive space for the proposed residential units. Turning to the proposed arrangement of parking, so there's very little change really through here, although the proposal does offer opportunity for enhancement, but essentially the boundaries would stay the same and the site would be laid out to provide 11 parking spaces. One of those spaces would be provided for the hall. The other 10 spaces would be provided for each of the units, with only one of the 1-bed units not having allocated parking space. But given the proximity to the town centre and various amenities, and given the size of that unit, officers consider that in this case, the provision of one small unit without parking would be acceptable. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Stuart. What I intend to do is to take the objectors, then to take the applicant, and then to take the local member. So we have Guy Eads as the objector. I think there's a written statement to be read out. Someone have that?
That's correct, Chairman. It's Ollie speaking, and I'll be reading it out on Mr. Eads' behalf.
So whenever you're ready.
This comment is made by Guy Eads as a Sandown resident since 1996. I welcome and accept the move forward to seek a new use for Sandown Town Hall. However, as a Grade 2 listed building and site and a building of some historical importance in Sandown, this current application needs amending prior to this new use being determined and confirmed. This current application does set out a method at some length for determining its heritage and historic importance. However, the method proposed is at the minimum level of compliance. The National Planning Policy Framework 2019 and Historic England Advice Note 12 set out best practice to be followed for this set of circumstances. This should follow a staged approach with a comprehensive brief and survey undertaken for the whole site and the submission of a report prior and in advance of consideration of a planning application. The report should reach a set of recommendations of procedures to then be followed in any subsequent planning proposal so that heritage issues and concerns are fully and properly addressed and the heritage value of the building conserved. This application has the process of analysis and assessment back to front and the wrong way round. As it is, the proposed report is in no way sufficiently comprehensive or properly structured to assess the full heritage value and significance of the whole building and site at Sandown Town Hall. In advance, the application is proposing demolition of sections of the site and substantial internal alterations without assessment of the heritage context and status. The application also proposes a new use for the building of 11 new residential units, sharing the site with continued public use of the main hall. New residential use may well be an appropriate part of the future new use. However, this current proposal for 11 residential units or any other proposal for residential use can only be evaluated when the heritage report is available, so that their design and construction is considered compatible with the heritage values of the site. It should therefore be put on hold until a full heritage survey can be done, analysis and evaluation made available in a public document, and an open invitation issued to seek ideas for viable new uses consistent with this important Grade 2 listed building. Heritage can easily be destroyed, and once lost can never be retrieved. This has happened before in Sandown several times over the past 10 years, and this should not be allowed to happen to this jewel of a building, the 1870 Sandown Town Hall. Please do not approve this application in its present form, and instead revise its method to reflect and respect the Grade 2 heritage listing of the building and site. Statement ends.
Thank you very much, Ollie. We have an objection from Councillor Debbie Andre, but she's had to leave the meeting to attend another meeting that she's chairing. She's asked me to read out the following. I note that there's now been an update paper on this application which largely addresses my concerns and those raised by residents. I therefore have no further comment. Thank you. I now call on Paul Thomas to respond on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair.
You actually have up to 10 minutes.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you, Chair. Going to make a short statement, effectively. So just to point out, this application is part of the wider regeneration of the Bay Area. It's part of our plan. And we understand that Sandown Town Hall is part of the very few listed buildings in Sandown. And it was the former home of Sandown Town Council and Sandown Fire Brigade, as pointed out. The building has been empty since 2017 and is falling into disrepair. It was previously listed as an asset of community value when the council subsequently indicated its intention to market the site. No offers for building of the site were received during the consultation period or since. So we fully recognise the nature of the architectural features and the size and placement of the windows. We recognise that the hall is difficult to convert to residential use. So the proposal is to protect the architectural integrity of the hall as a single space, as outlined. Other parts of the building more easily to convert to residential, and as outlined, can provide 9 units of accommodation. The outbuildings at the rear, whilst they're in the curtilage of the site, are not physically attached to the listed building. They're not listed individually and not within a conservation area and not on the local list. So the proposed demolition of the outbuildings will enable the 2 additional residential units to be built to help fund the restoration of the hall. The hall will be managed and maintained by the local authorities and the selected tenants on a leasehold arrangement. Looking at a maximum occupancy of 120 persons subject to fire escape licensings and building regulations approval. So basically it's to bring the building back to life and in use. The arrangement for the hall we haven't yet determined, but could be quite a number of uses: community use, fitness classes, exhibitions, conferences, private functions. Obviously there'll be control of the limit of the hall, which are quite enough to be used alongside residential. The space is there. The extensive costs of the repairs as it stands are in the order of 1.8 million, and the addition of residential and new houses built on the land to the rear will help contribute to the viability and actually preserve the historical heritage of the town hall. The loss of outbuildings and their replacement with a pair of houses will not materially harm the heritage of the town hall building, and it's precisely developed and looked at in that way, and will allow the partial conversion to keep the hall in longer term use. So we can assure that the conversion will be sympathetic to the architectural features and will retain the hall as one space with the potential it can continue to be utilised for community benefit. So that's my statement.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's now call upon the local member, Councillor Ian Ward.
Am I live, Chairman? I can't see. Yes.
You're live. You're live, and if you have up to 10 minutes.
Okay. Chairman, I certainly won't be taking that long. Chairman, this planning report is an extremely good paper. It had good debate, examining the history and the benefits of the application. People say we should examine its history. The writer of the paper clearly has. Other experts have been around for years, 10 years, to check the history, but have they bothered? I've just seen pictures of the main hall in the 1960s. I was a child then. I saw the hall in the 60s, and let me give you a feel for those times. My mother and father, my aunts and uncles used to attend dances in the town hall, big band dances, wearing ball gowns and dinner suits. Sandown had 2 thriving cinemas, many pubs, plenty of hotels offering external entertainment. However, we only had one black and white TV channel. I won't say BBC One because there was no other, it was only BBC. Southern Television didn't start until 1958 to give us a second channel. But people couldn't afford new TVs, so there was very little home entertainment. We were in the era of horse-drawn milk floats. Residents didn't travel far, few had cars. I can only remember visiting Newport twice. So there was much demand for local entertainment and demand entertainment. Do the people objecting really believe those days will come back and the town hall will burst into life again? The world has moved on. Many of the objectors don't even live nearby. Some of them haven't even lived in Sandown very long and have little idea what it was like. That time is firmly in the past. Let me get back to today. Firstly, Sandown Town Council do support this application. The building is a blight on our community. It is dangerous. You may remember that Sandown Town Council had to leave because of the danger. It has crumbling walls, a poor roof. The building attracts litter, fly tipping, broken furniture, vandalism, antisocial behaviour, shouting and screaming, dozens of cans and bottles and household rubbish just dumped around the outskirts of the building. I know because I regularly have to ask Island Roads and our waste services to come and clear it up. But do the objectors care? I don't know. They have grandiose ideas paid for by, oh, hang on, they have no funding. So the building can rot for another decade and they can continue to blight the community while they talk about saving the building and dreaming up ideas for its use. The main hall is still available. The main exterior of the building will not be altered, only the extensions and outbuildings. The exterior will be refurbished and that's what residents want to see. Chairman, I'd just like to read this text out to you that I got this morning from a resident of Grafton Lane. Purely unsolicited at all, it just popped up. Hi Ian, you are aware of the upgrade of the town hall and the 2 semi-detached houses going in opposite. He lives at the back of the town hall, which I might add is great news. So the local residents want this to happen. The world has changed, people have changed. Let's not keep looking backwards. Sandown needs to look forwards. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Can I get you to turn your camera off again?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I have, first of all, I'll give the officer the opportunity to respond to the comments that have been made. Stuart?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd say most of this is covered in our report. I think the only thing I'd perhaps like to touch on, just for clarity for members, really, is that you know, in terms of the outbuildings, I think just to avoid confusion, they do form part of the listed building. So whilst they may not be locally listed, you know, whether they're attached or not, they are within the curtilage and they do form part of the overall listed building. So we do need to consider that in our assessment and determination of this application. The officer report clearly sets out how we've assessed significance of this building and how we consider the various elements. What I advise members is that officers are of the view that the principal significance of this building is the main hall and the accompanying north wing and various other more prominent additions like the fire station, whereas the outbuildings themselves generally you know, house supportive functions or associated functions and are generally of, although they are still important in terms of the overall significance, they are of lesser significance, and as members will see from the photos, many of those over time have been altered as they've been reused and adapted, you know, to undertake various other functions for the civic life of the building. In terms of the comment that was made by a member of the public, in terms of the significance assessment and taking a staged approach, members will note that condition 4 of the on the reports of both applications recommends a written scheme of investigation to be agreed with a local authority, and that will have our archaeological officers' input into it to ensure that there is some pre-commencement investigation of the building, particularly around some concerns raised about possible murals and artwork that may remain, as well as a possible gallery within the hall. So, you know, there would be a staged pre-commencement investigation of the building and research done, and that would then inform, you know, whether or not there is a need to protect other special features that may or may not be within the building following further investigation. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I have councillors Tyndall, Howe, Price, Jones Evans and Hollis in that order. So Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's a very, very simple, very simple and down to earth question. There's nine properties there, and I know they mentioned waste bins, but as every property will have at least a black bin and another bin and a food bin, there doesn't seem to be anywhere to store these for all these 9 properties. Has that been taken into consideration? And remember, they've got to put the bins out on the front of the road anyway, otherwise Steve Hastings' crew won't be very happy collecting them.
Stuart, can you answer that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it has been considered. Members will note that, again, I shared the indicative boundary plan, which has been submitted by the applicant. That is indicative at the moment. We have a planning condition recommended to agree a landscaping scheme for the site, including boundary treatments. That will ensure that the majority of the units that are proposed would have identified curtilages within which they could locate bin storage. Furthermore, there is some indicated areas on the site plan for bin storage for some of the units that wouldn't have gardens. So to answer the Councillor Tyndall's question, yes, it has been considered. There are planning conditions recommended, and through those conditions, we would agree with the applicant or developer appropriate bin storage in line with our SPD.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howe. John.
Thank you, Chairman. I have in follow up with Ian Ward's statement. I just wanted to do an all-hour yesterday's statement was that my grandfather was actually in the Home Guard based at that site during the war. Right, my question is, this building that's going to be the community bit of it, how much money, I know they're going to build it, but how much money will be available to make it useful for the community, and who will be responsible for the community part of it once it's finished? I'm not sure whether it's the right question to ask now, but it seems to me that it's all right having a community bit built if we need people to run it and find out to keep it going. Thank you.
I'm not sure that that's really a planning question.
Well, I'm not sure either, but somebody, it's no use having a community bit if there's nobody going to take it on, because it'll just get run down again, and then applications for more flats and everything put into the building.
I will use my discretion to allow Paul Thomas to come back in here. He might be able to answer that.
That's very kind of you, Chairman. Thank you very much for that.
Paul, are you there?
Yeah, just waiting to go live. Am I live, Chair? Yeah, live. Yeah, so yeah, I think as I said, obviously the building would have to come forward first, and the repairs are done. So essentially, I mentioned the figure of 1.8 million. That's just to bring the building back up to scratch, really, in terms of a community use. So once the development's done and the hall's built back up to scratch, then we'd be looking to lease that and set up, the longer term plans for the community use. But it has to come up back to use first. So basically the hall will be leased, and any income from the leasing of the hall will be used to maintain it going forward. But we haven't worked out whether that will be through the town council or community group or anything else first, because we're just at the planning committee stage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this is for the type of building it is. It's quite a complicated redevelopment of it, and it's this is the kind of thing that certainly helps the committee when we do a site visit, which obviously we can't do in these kind of times. But having read all the objectors' comments, and I've considered everything that's been said by them, I think really that they pale into insignificance when you look at the fact that this building is crumbling, and it needs something now. It needs to be saved now, otherwise there will be nothing left to save in another few years. The kind of restoration that this building would need to bring it back into the kind of use that the objectors are suggesting simply wouldn't ever stack up financially. This is a period building that needs to be saved. This is a development that will bring it back into some community use, but will certainly provide some much needed housing, but will retain all the historic elements of the front of the building. And I think if we were waiting for other heritage reports and so on, this opportunity could be lost. I think we should seize this opportunity to save this building, and I'll be supporting this application, and we'll be voting to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Jones-Evans. Julie.
Thank you, Chair. It's not often I disagree with my fellow Newport member, Councillor Price, but I'm afraid I have to agree with you quite strongly on this one, Councillor. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. On point 619 in the report, it says there is some uncertainty regarding the presence of artistic works from Henry Tooth. So is the uncertainty that they were there in the first place, or is the uncertainty there that they're still there? If I could have the answer to that, then I'd like to continue with my probing, if you wouldn't mind.
Stuart, are you able to answer that? Works of art.
Hi, Chairman. Yes, Councillor Jones-Evans, there is documentary references to Henry Tooth doing artistic work within the building. There is no evidence visually within the building of that work. It is possible that it may have been overboarded or covered up by previous alterations. Hence why there is a programmed stage of further investigation pre-commencement recommended, particularly in the former reading room and the hall itself, and that will help to gauge whether or not there are such work still surviving within the building, and if it is, what then is done to preserve and record those elements for posterity. So I hope that answers your question. I think at this moment in time, the simple answer is we don't know if they survived because there is no visual evidence without further investigation.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to confirm that there was works done. In fact, Christopher Dresser himself, who wrote the Technical Educator, which Henry Tooth followed, because Henry Tooth was actually quite a remarkable person. Started off as a butcher's apprentice, and then developed his artistic talent using some of Christopher Dresser, who Christopher Dresser was actually one of our first and most important designer. We're talking at the times of William Morris, so he's very, very significant in our art culture. And he described Henry Tooth as a genius. And then Henry Tooth went on to work with Christopher Dresser for many years. And a piece of ceramic art by Henry Tooth was sold recently for £22,000. So I really think we need to take this issue of the missing tooth very, very seriously, because this could turn completely on its head what we do with this building. I mean, this isn't regeneration as far as I'm concerned. This, what you can do with art is you can redo a cultural-led regeneration, which they've done all across the country. In fact, members might be familiar with the cultural-led regeneration you can't see that document by the local government association, which just shows how much money it can pour into a place from such discoveries and promotion of such art. It creates employment, attracts more visitors, boosts the tourism sector, stimulates the town centre footfall, local businesses. And in fact, this is what the town hall did in the first place. And the report says that the town hall was there to help growth of Sandown as a seaside resort. And now it could play that role again. It's probably, it could have this hidden gem there that could turn this whole application on its head. So I have to agree with was it Mr. Eads who said earlier that his back to front. In fact, that's what I've written on my notes. This is almost the cart before the horse. We need to have some really high quality experts in here. I'm talking people from the V&A to come and assess what they find. If they don't find anything, then we look again. But I think this is very, very important that we do this work first and see what's there, because we've only got 12 listed buildings in Sandown, and one of them is the memorial, and it's very important that we do the best by this very, very significant building. So I would like, if we could strengthen that condition 4, that nothing is done, and that there's an assessment is done if they do find these tooth murals, that we do reassess what happens with this building, because I believe that having a community hall in the middle and having the restrictions around it regarding the time, you're almost setting this up to fail, because you're creating a public space but can only be used during certain hours of the day because you've got so much residential around it. So I'm not sure this is exactly the right solution for this building.
Okay. Councillor Hollis.
Yes. First of all, a question, and that is, I think I saw in the photographs that part of the outside the building is core stone, core stone, if those people don't recognise how I pronounce it. A much abused building material on the island, last mined in the 1400s. They're all medieval stones. Can we make sure that whatever's done, none of it is thrown away, it is reused, or it goes to somewhere else where it can be reused. Secondly, I think I think this is an excellent application, and I think we have to move on. And nothing is perfect. I would ask, though, is there any way that one can actually find a parking space for each unit of accommodation? The reason being is that some people get confused between reduction of use in the car and the reduction in use of or pollutants from a car. If the car is not going to go away, a vehicle is not going to go away, a method of transport is not going to go away. And mistakes have been made in the past, not necessarily on this island, but elsewhere, where people have been, there's a flat sold and they have no car parking space, but they have every right to be able to have a method of use of transport the same as someone else. So if that extra car parking space could be found, I think that would be better. Having said that, I very much support this application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hollis. Councillor Hastings.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait for that red line. I'm not seeing a red line. Ah, there it is.
Yeah, you've got it.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Well, firstly, what I would like to say is thank you to Councillor Hollis for his question on waste, which is clearly very important, and I might have asked it myself if he hadn't already done so, and I'm pleased with the answer from officers. And it's a fact that, as a local member, Councillor Ward stated that this site has not been looked after. It's been run down and it's been blighted with waste, fly tipping, etc. I know because he talks to me about these incidents as they happen. As far as I can see, this is a good report. It's a good application. It does protect the heritage as best as possible. There's lots of protection in there going forward. So I think it's sympathetic to the heritage, and it will produce much needed housing and a community facility as well. And I think the soundproofing might be important to that, which is in the conditions. So I will support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hastings. Councillor Fuller.
Yes, yeah, I am live. Yeah, for many years now, I've supported regeneration of Sandown. Sandown is an area that needs regeneration, and I think that this redevelopment of the town hall is good, as a good thing. It's good for the future of this building. It's good for the people of Sandown, and it will further protect the building with the added new conditions. So I'm very happy with the conditions that were posted up by officers this afternoon, and I am in full support of this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Churchman.
Thank you, Chair. I support the application. I came here 25 years ago, and I can't believe it's taken that long to get this building back into proper use. I know it's had a checkered history over the last few years. I remember it once, it was, I think it housed the youth club until it was declared too dangerous. Then at the side they had a small workshop for which disadvantaged children used to go to learn skills. Then it became completely empty. Quite frankly, I would love to see it brought back into use, and I only wish you could demolish the bit that was the fire station, leave the main building with the addition on the left, because it is a beautiful facade. But life is a compromise, and you have to move with the times, and we need living accommodation desperately. I do have a slight question in my mind about the community hall. Councillor Hastings mentioned soundproofing, and people are going to buy flats there, and if the hall is used for anything and everything, then that soundproofing is going to have to be pretty effective. But I'm slightly concerned, will we actually be able to use, or will people want to use that hall, and what for? Because the town council already have premises up at the Broadway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beston.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wait to go live. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Section, so it's a clarification, if I can, please. Section 6.19 and 6.30. And Councillor Jones-Evans has actually alluded to it, and particularly the works or possible any hidden artifacts or the work, especially from Henry II. So we've mentioned within the report the words recorded and noted should such items be found. What I'd like to hear is the words storage and retention. So my question is, if there is any discovery of any hidden historic artifacts, where will these be retained and under whose responsibility? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Would officers like to answer that? Stuart.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep. So in direct response to Councillor Preston's question, you note from the update paper, we've actually reinforced or enhanced the condition 4 to do with the investigation. The archaeologist has requested a timetable element in there so that we can agree timings of that investigation and the various stages, including pre-commencement and during works. Should special features, artwork, artifacts of special interest be encountered during that, then we would obviously, through our condition 4 and the scheme investigation, decide how those elements are safeguarded ultimately, whether that's on site, whether it's by recording, very much dependent on what their significance is, and the best method of either protecting, preserving or recording them, depending on that. It could be that, you know, a decision is taken just to record as part of the final report in the WSI. It could be that actually the decision is taken to leave it in situ and board it over, and as it probably is at the moment. So I can't give a definitive answer on how things may be dealt with, but all I can say is that our appropriate specialists will have input into that.
Thank you very much. And a final comment from Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Beston, for your probing on that. I'm afraid I didn't receive the papers this afternoon with the strengthening of this condition 4, so thank you for bringing that up. You know, this is significant, and I think, you know, having the appropriate level of people that can actually understand the importance of these works, if they are found, that is absolutely key, because I think that could turn things. My question was, Chair, was I don't know if anyone can answer it, but these last few months, Historic England have been giving out some significant grants for listed buildings, and I was just like Greater listed buildings in particular. We had some for the Guildhall in Newport. I just wondered what application, if any, was made for the emergency works to keep this property in a good order, because it's basically works to sort of, you know, make the roof sound, that kind of thing. So did we apply for any money from Historic England for this building?
I suspect that that's not a question that officers, planning officers can answer, but I ask if anyone's here who can answer it.
I just think it's important we look after our own buildings, isn't it, Councillor? That's my point, I think. But yeah, we'll leave that one hanging, shall we?
It's a comment that we will pass on, that we should be looking at that.
Thank you.
I think it's time to go to a vote. I will move that we accept this. Will someone second that?
Second, that's Chairman, Councillor Beston.
Thank you very much. Can we go to the vote, please?
Chairman, can I, sorry to interrupt here, can I just for the sake of the minutes, I'm assuming that that's a proposal to accept in accordance with officer recommendation on both applications. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll take the vote. Councillor Beston.
4.
Councillor Cameron.
4.
Councillor Churchman.
4.
Councillor Fuller.
4.
Councillor Hastings.
4.
Councillor Hollis.
4.
Councillor Howe.
4.
Councillor Jones Evans.
Against.
Councillor Tyndall.
4.
Councillor Price.
4.
Councillor Quirk.
4.
That's 10 for, 1 against, and no abstentions.
Thank you very much. So the planning permission is granted. We have no members' questions notified. So with that, we can close the meeting. Thank you very much for everyone who's been part of the committee over the last 4 years. And thank you for your efforts and support.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much and well done.
Thank you, Chairman.